There comes a time in every soul's journey when the weight of what we carry begins to suffocate the very life force within us. We cling to people, memories, identities, pain, believing that if we let go, we will lose ourselves. But the truth is, you are not what you hold on to. You are what is left when everything else falls away. In the words of Carl Jung, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. And sometimes, the greatest act of acceptance is to let go. The self, your true self, does not emerge through effort, ambition, or the accumulation of experiences. It reveals itself in silence, in stillness, and most powerfully, in surrender. But the surrender required is not of your will or your strength, it is the surrender of the ego. The ego, by its very nature, is defensive. It clings to control, seeks approval, and defines itself by labels, roles, and identities. It builds a wall between who you appear to be and who you truly are. As long as you are dominated by your ego, you will forever chase shadows, never seeing the radiant light within you. Letting go of the ego is not an act of weakness, it is the most courageous act of inner transformation. It is to look directly at the illusion of who you thought you had to be, the perfect child, the successful adult, the person who never fails, who never feels afraid, who never shows vulnerability. These masks, though once useful, become prisons when they are mistaken for the self. And no one can thrive behind bars of their own making. To release the ego is to step into the unknown. And yes, that feels terrifying. Because the ego feeds on certainty and control. It says, I must be this, or I am nothing. But the soul whispers a deeper truth, you are already everything. You simply forgot. Carl Jung taught that the self is not achieved by adding more to oneself, it is uncovered by stripping away what is false. And the false always originates in the ego's fear of not being enough. When you stop identifying with the roles you play, the accolades you receive, and even the pain you've endured, something extraordinary begins to happen. A deeper awareness arises, a presence that is not bound by thought, not shaken by circumstance, not defined by the external. This is the self, not egoic, but eternal. It does not need to prove. It does not need to win. It simply is, whole, complete, and aligned with the rhythm of the cosmos. Letting go of the ego does not mean erasing your personality or your drive, it means no longer being ruled by them. It means stepping back from the constant performance and touching something sacred within yourself. That sacred space is the home of the self. And when you arrive there, when you finally let go of all the noise, you do not feel smaller, you feel expansive. You feel a calm, unshakable sense of being that no external chaos can destroy. You realize that what you've been searching for was never out there, it was always within. But you had to let go, to remember. And in that remembering, you become free. Pain is a powerful teacher, but it is not meant to be your identity. It is something you have experienced, not something you are. And yet, for so many, pain becomes a mask worn so long it feels like skin. People say, this is just who I am broken, I am damaged, I am unworthy. But these are not truths. They are conclusions drawn from wounds that were never fully seen, never fully processed, never fully healed. There is no shame in being hurt. In fact, to be human is to hurt. Life inevitably brings loss, betrayal, failure, and rejection. But what we are not told, what we are rarely taught, is that the pain is not where your journey ends. It is where it begins. Pain is not the destination. It is the doorway. But you must walk through it, not camp at its threshold. When you identify with your pain, you freeze time. You lock yourself in a moment of suffering and call it your home. But pain was never meant to be permanent, it was meant to be moved through. It speaks to you because it wants to be acknowledged, felt, and finally, released. If you do not let go of your pain, it will shape your identity, distort your perception, and quietly run your life from the shadows. Carl Jung understood that what is not brought to consciousness will be lived out as fate. And many live fates defined entirely by unprocessed pain, attracting relationships that echo old wounds, repeating patterns of self-sabotage, shrinking from love or opportunity because somewhere deep inside, they still believe they are undeserving. But you were never meant to become your suffering. You were meant to evolve through it. The pain was a messenger. It came to reveal what needed healing, what needed releasing, and what needed deeper understanding. But once its message is received, it must be let go. Like fire that has already burned what needed to be purified. To live in your pain is to live in the past. But the self, the true, whole you, lives in the present. It is not chained to what was done to you. It is not defined by who failed to see your worth. It is not shaped by your scars. The self is something deeper. It is the silent witness who was there before the pain and will be there after the healing. So take a moment to breathe. To look at your wounds not with judgment, but with compassion. See them as chapters, not your entire story. Do not build your identity around the worst things that happened to you. Instead, let your identity form around how you chose to rise, how you chose to let go, and how you chose to love again, starting with yourself. You are not your pain. You are the one who survived it. You are the one still standing. And that is the part of you that deserves to be seen, honored, and lived fully. Attachment is often mistaken for love, for loyalty, for passion. But in its unexamined form, attachment is fear disguised as devotion. It is the ego's desperate attempt to cling to what feels known, predictable, and safe, even when that very thing is slowly eroding your spirit. Attachment whispers, "Without this, I am nothing." And that belief is what traps the soul in cycles of stagnation, confusion, and quiet suffering. We become attached not only to people but to roles, beliefs, identities, pain, routines, and stories about who we think we are. We hold tightly to these things because they give us a sense of control, a way to anchor ourselves in the chaos of existence. But what we often fail to see is that the tighter we grip, the more we suffocate our capacity to evolve. Transformation requires spaciousness. It requires surrender. And attachment is the very opposite of surrender. Carl Jung taught that nothing is truly transformed without first being accepted. But attachment does not accept, it possesses. It seeks to own, define, and hold constant that which by nature is fluid and impermanent. Life is movement. It is a dance of birth and death, beginning and ending, gain and loss. The soul, in its wisdom, flows with this rhythm. But the ego resists. It says, "Let me freeze this moment. Let me hold on to this person. Let me protect this version of myself forever." And so the journey of becoming is halted. When we are attached, we are not truly present. We live in fear, fear of change, fear of abandonment, fear of uncertainty. But the truth is, everything you are attached to will eventually change or leave. That is not a threat, it is a sacred truth of existence. Nothing is permanent, and in that impermanence lies your freedom. When you stop grasping, you begin to trust. When you release the need to control, you open yourself to transformation. To transform means to become something new. But how can you become if you are clinging to what was? How can you evolve if your hands are full of the past? Sometimes, the very thing you refuse to let go of is the very thing holding you back from your highest potential. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you detach from feeling or from love. It means you stop needing outcomes to validate your worth. It means you allow people and situations to be what they are, without trying to twist them into what your ego desires. It means you make peace with the fact that real love, real growth, and real healing happen only in freedom. Attachment chains you to a fixed point in time, but transformation is a river. And that river will not carry you forward until you stop trying to swim upstream. When you release your grip, on old versions of yourself, on toxic relationships, on limiting beliefs, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself. You discover that you are not the roles you play or the people you hold. You are the awareness behind it all, capable of moving, changing, becoming, over and over again. There is power in non-attachment. There is wisdom in release. And there is peace in knowing that transformation only begins where control ends. Let go, not to lose, but to grow. Not to fall, but to rise. We spend much of our lives running from the parts of ourselves we deem unworthy, ugly, or unacceptable. We hide our anger behind politeness, our envy behind false praise, our sadness behind a smile. We exile these emotions into the darkness, hoping that by denying them, we might become better, more lovable, more successful, more whole. But what we fail to understand is that true wholeness does not come from what is seen and celebrated. It comes from what is hidden. It comes from the shadow. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the unconscious part of the psyche that holds everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves, our instincts, our desires, our guilt, our shame, our fear. These aspects are not inherently evil or destructive. In fact, they are often sources of immense power, creativity, and wisdom. But because they threaten the image we try to present to the world, we suppress them. And whatever we suppress does not disappear, it festers. It operates in the background, shaping our behaviors, our reactions, our relationships, and our fate. To fear the shadow is to fear yourself. And when you are at war with yourself, there can be no peace. There can be no freedom. We often think freedom means escaping pain, transcending flaws, rising above the darkness. But in truth, freedom means turning toward what you've been running from. It means looking the shadow in the eye and saying, I see you. You are part of me. Because until you do, the shadow will own you. It will show up as projections, when you hate in others what you deny in yourself. It will emerge in self-sabotage, in destructive habits, in toxic patterns you repeat without understanding why. But when you integrate your shadow, when you bring it into the light, it loses its grip. You begin to reclaim your lost energy. You stop being divided within. You no longer need to pretend, to perform, or to protect yourself from the truth of who you are. And in that space of radical self-honesty, something extraordinary happens. The parts of you that once felt threatening become your greatest allies. Your anger, once denied, becomes a force for justice. Your sadness becomes depth and empathy. Your fear becomes discernment. Your jealousy becomes a signal pointing you to your desires. Every shadow contains a gift, but only for those brave enough to face it. This is not an easy path. Shadow work demands courage, patience, and self-compassion. It requires you to sit with discomfort, to resist the urge to judge or run away. But it is the only path to true freedom. Not the shallow freedom of avoidance, but the deep liberation that comes from knowing yourself fully and choosing to love yourself anyway. In owning your shadow, you reclaim your wholeness. You no longer split yourself between light and dark, good and bad, worthy and unworthy. You see yourself as a full spectrum, a dynamic, evolving soul capable of both destruction and creation, weakness and strength, fear and love. The shadow does not make you less. It makes you real. And only the real self can be free. So stop hiding. Go into the depths. Not to be consumed by your darkness, but to rescue the parts of you that are still waiting to be seen. Your shadow holds the key to your freedom. All it asks is that you turn the lock. Letting go is not about giving up. It is not a sign of weakness, nor is it an act of apathy. Letting go is one of the most powerful steps a human being can take toward wholeness. It is the quiet, courageous decision to no longer allow the past to dictate your present, or your fear of the future to steal your peace. It is the act of releasing your grip on what was never truly yours to control, and instead placing your trust in the deeper intelligence of life. In the depths of the psyche, letting go is not about loss, it is about return. A return to the self. Carl Jung taught that wholeness is not found in perfection but in integration. In allowing all aspects of yourself, your light and shadow, your pain and potential, your vulnerability and strength, to exist together in harmony. But integration cannot happen when your hands are clenched around the things that no longer serve you. To become whole, you must be willing to let go of illusions, the illusion that you are only lovable if you are always strong, the illusion that your worth depends on what others think of you, the illusion that you can outrun your past by denying it. You must let go of the roles that feel safe but suffocate you, the relationships that drain your energy, the beliefs that keep you small, and the guilt that keeps you stuck. Letting go does not mean you forget or abandon what shaped you. It means you choose not to be ruled by it. It means you can look back without drowning, feel deeply without becoming lost, and move forward without dragging everything behind you. When you let go, you stop carrying burdens that were never yours to bear, burdens of expectation, of shame, of unresolved grief. This path requires trust, not in external circumstances, but in your own inner wisdom. Trust that even when you are shedding parts of your identity, something essential remains. Something whole. Something eternal. The ego clings. It tells you, if you let go, you'll fall apart. But the self knows otherwise. The self knows that letting go is not falling apart, it is falling into alignment. It is stripping away the false so that the truth may emerge. It is the burning away of everything superficial so that what is sacred may stand unshaken. Letting go is a sacred grief. It is the death of an old self, an old story. But all true transformation begins in endings. The caterpillar must dissolve in the cocoon before it becomes the butterfly. The seed must break open before it becomes the tree. And you, too, must release what no longer fits to become what you truly are. There is beauty in this surrender. There is peace in no longer fighting what is. There is power in choosing to loosen your grip, take a breath, and say, I trust life more than I fear change. Wholeness is not a destination. It is a way of being. A way of walking through the world unburdened by the chains of the past, and unafraid of what lies ahead. To be whole is to be free, to live not from fear, but from authenticity, presence, and inner truth. And this freedom, this deep, soul-level wholeness, begins the moment you choose to let go. So today, if you feel the burden is too heavy, set it down. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you do. You must let go, not because you're giving up, but because you're rising. In that release, the soul breathes again. In that surrender, you become whole.